Hello everyone, and welcome back. This is the 5th video tutorial about Blender Basics, where we are gonna learn how to create our own objects. We are gonna open a brand new scene. For that, use the Blender menu at the top of the screen and click on File, New, General. You might recognize the default Blender scene, where you've got a camera, a cube, and a light. We won't need the light for the moment, so what I'm gonna do is delete it from the scene by using the 3D view menu. Go to Object, and at the bottom of it you've got Delete. Now it has removed the light from the scene. To simplify the process, we're gonna use reference images for the object we're gonna build, which you can sometimes call model sheet. To do that, I'm gonna import the image in the software using the 3D view menu. Go to Add, Image, and choose Reference. There, you can browse to where the files are. I will add a link in the description to download them, and choose Export Table Perspective. We can't see what's displayed on the image because of the cube, so we are gonna switch to the wireframe shading mode. Now we can see the object is gonna be a table, one of the simplest one. To go further, we're gonna import images that corresponds to the orthographic view of this object. Let's move this plane somewhere else and import another view. Go again to Add, Image, Reference, and then choose Export Table Front. This is the front of this table, and to align it to an axis, I'm gonna show you something else. This is hidden beside the navigation tool on the top right hand corner of the 3D view, and it's this little arrow that you can see here. If I click on it, I've got something popping out, and in the Item tab you can see that we have the location of our object, its rotation, and its scale. What I want to do now is to reset its rotation, so I'm gonna just left click on each field and set it to 0. Okay. If you want to remove this panel, you can position your mouse on its side and then scale it so that it disappears. Now, let's have a look at our object. It is for the moment flat on the ground. What I want to do is make it straight, so for that I'm gonna rotate it on the x-axis. And because I want it straight, meaning at a 90-degree angle, I'm gonna use something else that I'm gonna show you. If you hold the Control key on your keyboard while transforming an object, this will snap to a specific angle. You can see here that it's snapping every 5 degrees, so I can now better position my object to a 90-degree angle. If you're not sure how many degrees you did rotate the object, you can still look at it in this panel, and now it is rotated at 90 degrees. Another thing you might have noticed is that when I rotate my object, have a look in this area of the software on the top left corner, and you will see that there is a text saying rotation, a certain number of degrees, and global, meaning we are doing a rotation on the object with the number of degrees indicated and on the global world axis. Now I'm gonna move this plane a bit backward so that it doesn't interfere with the cube. And again, if I hold the control key, you will notice that the object is moving every square of the grid. A square on the grid represents 1 meter, so it's moving every 1 meter. I'm gonna set it here. Okay. And now I'm gonna import all the other views using the same method. The side view, then rotation, like that, and then the latest view, which is the top view. And I'm gonna position it a bit below. Now, we've got our 3 views and a perspective view, just in case we need to understand better what the object looks like. And this we can set up or position wherever we want. I'm gonna hide this panel and then switch to a specific axis so that I can see and start modifying my original cube. Let's start with the big board of the table, which is at the top here, and using the transform tools, what we can do is trying to match both. Because the background is white, we can't really see the outline of our object. So what I'm gonna do is selecting this reference image, and as for the light before, when doing that, you've got an extra tab here representing a small image where you've got this object properties that you can modify. Clicking on opacity, you can change the opacity of the object, meaning that the white won't be too much bright and we can still see the table on the image. Let's finish our transformations. Zoom in. You know all these tools now. Okay, this doesn't have to be precise. Let's switch to another orthographic view, to the side view, and do the same process for the background image, changing its opacity, like that. And now, I can say that we have our first piece of table, which is the main board at the top. I'm gonna now start creating the legs. For that, I have to choose which basic object is the closest to the shape of the leg. In the Add menu that we've seen before, you've got at the top Mesh, and here is the list of all the basic shapes that you can choose from. The goal of this exercise is to use as less object as possible, and so we need to start with the object that fits the best our table's legs shape, which looks like a cube. So I'm gonna create a cube, go to Add, Mesh, and select Cube, and it will create a cube the same way we have at the beginning of the scene. Now let's do again a switch to wireframe mode and to a specific axis. you can make objects intersect each other. That doesn't really matter. Okay, that seems pretty okay. Now, if we switch back to solid mode and we're going to look at our object, you can see that we can't see when the object intersects another object. The leg of the table looks fine. Now, there are 4 legs on this table. We could do what we did just previously, creating another cube and scale it again. But to simplify our actions, and because all the legs looks like they are similar, we can do something else, which is duplicating the existing leg. For that, select the leg and go to Object and choose Duplicate Objects. You will notice that the first thing that the software is asking you to do is to move your object. You can either do that, but because the plane we are looking at the object is not really aligned in a specific view, and so we don't really know where we are placing it, you can simply cancel the transformation by right-clicking on your mouse. And now, if I'm to move the duplicate, see that you really got 2 objects. I'm gonna align to the view, set it like that. Now we've got 2 legs. To have the third and fourth leg, what we can do is duplicate several objects at once. So select this other object and now use Object, Duplicate Objects, the same way we did before. Right click and then move them on the Y-axis. I'm gonna switch to this view to make sure they are perfectly aligned with the reference. And now we've got a table with 4 legs. As we have seen in the reference image, this table is a bit more complex with this, and also some wooden planks below the main one, and these little things that we're gonna create soon. To do that, simply repeat the process. But one thing we can do, if we don't want to start from scratch, from a cube, is using what we already have. The beams in here, they look like it could be taken from one of the legs. So if I duplicate it, Object, Duplicate Object, and now what I can do is to rotate it on the Y-axis, holding Ctrl on my keyboard to have a 90-degree rotation. And now, switching to this axis, I can modify what was previously a leg to fit what we want to do. I'm gonna scale it down this way, move it in place, and then scale it again to be the size I want it to be. As I said before, it doesn't need to be exact, because once an object intersects another, you can't really see it when looking in the perspective view. Switching to the side, I'm gonna scale it a bit down this way, and now I'm gonna duplicate it and move it on the other side. There you go. Last thing is this wood beam here. I'm gonna do the same thing using the top view this time. We haven't modified this image yet, so let's do that. And now I'm gonna take one of these, duplicate it, okay, rotate it again 90 degrees on the z-axis, this way, and then position it here, switch to another view, and you can see that it's almost looking like the other beams. Okay, that should be it. Let's have a look at this. It's alright. And now let's have a look in perspective view, and you can see that it's looking pretty good. It's almost done. We've got a few more things. This wooden part at the bottom of the main one. Let's do the same. Select an object that looks like it. Duplicate it. Move it where I want it to be. Shaping it as I want. I feel like it should be a bit, let's say, thinner than the beams in the middle. Then let's move it over here. I don't think it's high enough. Do that this way, and it should be alright. Let's duplicate it and move it to the opposite side. Okay, now I've got these two beams, and I want to have one more here and one more here. I'm gonna do the same than previously. Select the two of them, and then let's say from the top view, I'm gonna duplicate them, rotate them 90 degrees, and then scale them. And now I can just move them somewhere like that, and I can just select only this one and then move it over here. Perfect, I'm sure now our table looks great. Nice. The latest thing we're gonna do are those little pieces of wood. You could start fresh with one piece on this side and one on the other, but as we said before, 3D is not about cheating, but we need to save the amount of objects we're gonna use, and this would use two objects. While if I take this beam, I duplicate it, I will scale it down on its size like that, and then scale it on the x-axis. This will do as if there was two objects sticking out on the side, but we only use one object to do that, and it doesn't matter because we can't see the beam inside here. I'm gonna make sure it's the right size compared to drawings that have been made before. They are a bit thicker, so let's arrange that. Alright, and now I'm gonna duplicate it and move it on the other side. This type of view, and you can zoom on it to make sure it's at the right place, which is about here. Okay. Now our table is finished, it's completed. Let's have a look at it. Feel it's great, don't you? Okay, next step, I'm gonna do what we've learned before, meaning we're gonna set this scene up so that we can do a small render. First, I'm gonna add an object below the table to act as a floor. For that, you can add a plane and then scale it up, just like that. Another thing I'm gonna show you is, because if you were to move this table, if I move this, I will have to move every single piece of it. What you can do here is select all the pieces of the table, remove the object you don't need using the rectangle selection, holding the Control key. And if every part of the object is selected, what you can do is joining them as one using the menu Object and then clicking on Join. And now they are all one single object. If I move it, it all moves at the same time. Switching to the material preview mode, see our table is white. I'm gonna add it a new material, not using this one but creating a new one. So I'm duplicating it, calling it wood, and then I'm just gonna switch to a brown color. I'm gonna modify the roughness just a bit so that it doesn't reflect too much, and the metallic slider will stay at 0. Now for the render, as you've seen before, it will render what the camera sees, but this view might not be really what you want. What you can do is moving just to an angle that suits you, maybe something like that. Okay. And now selecting the camera in the outliner, you can go to View, Align View, and select Align Active Camera to View. This will position the camera without changing the view, and now we can see our object is included in here. What I'm gonna do is zoom out a little bit because I wanted to have a bit more space around my object, and then do it again. View, Align Active Camera to View. Now it looks better to me. The next step is switching to the rendered shading mode and then adding lights. I'm gonna do as I did before, using 3 lights, one as a key light to lit the object, like that, slightly warm. Second one as a fill light to lit dark side of the object, like this. And the latest one as a rim light to lit the contour of the object. Now let's have a look. Let's go to render image, and see how this looks. It's okay, but you might notice some differences between this render and the one we have made before. That is because Blender uses 2 main render engines, and now we are by default using the Eevee render engine, which is more like a real-time engine. The calculations are different from the other rendering engine, which is Cycles. To switch from one to the other, go to the Properties panel and choose the Render Properties tab, and in the Render Engine drop-down list, select Cycles. On the device part, choose GPU compute to use your graphic cards to calculate the image, which is usually faster than the CPU. And now we can launch another render. Go to render again, render image. This will take a bit more time to complete, but you will see the image looks a bit better. Once it's finished, you can again go to image, save, and then select a folder and a name for the image. I'm gonna call it table render and click save as image. One other thing before we wrap it up is to also save your scene. What you will do is go to file and click on save, and now you can give it again a name and click save Blender file. If you want to save other versions of this scene, you can go to file and click on save as instead of save. And there is something that I really like to use in Blender, which is this plus or minus signs here that will allow you to add a number beside the name and to increment or decrement it so that you can save several versions of your scene. I'm not going to do that because the scene hasn't changed for me. Last tip for you is if your render takes too much time, I'm not gonna go through all of these settings now, but you can try to lower the max sample. It is set to 4096 at the moment. Try a lower value and balance it with the quality of the render and the time it takes. Okay, that was the last lesson for Blender Basics tutorial series. Hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I encourage you to work and create a lot of objects and scenes based on that. And if you want to link a project or your portfolio in the description for me to have a look at it, I will gladly do it. Take care everyone, have fun, and see you for the next tutorials. Bye.